Hi, my name is Doug Schneider. Welcome back to Real Hi-Fi. In the previous episode, I talked about measurements and listening and how, if done incorrectly, measurements can bias the listening process. I want to continue on with that theme in this episode because a lot of comments ensued, both under the video, in the comments section, as well as on forums, and I want to address some of the things that were said. So first and foremost, I'll say that most people agreed with me, which wasn't really surprising, but even some reviewers chimed in. I saw elsewhere that John Atkinson put that stereophile reviewers are not allowed to see the measurements before their reviews are submitted. Aaron Hardison of Aaron's Audio Corner wrote a long post in our comments section that basically said he listens before he measures for the same reasons I explained, and it makes sense. But then there were a few people, a minority, who said, nope, I have to see those measurements before I do the listening. And I think probably when you look closely, there are three reasons behind that. One reason could be that they simply don't know better. They haven't learned enough. Another reason is what I talked about in the previous video. They overestimate their ability to put their own biases aside. And a third reason, they're probably using the measurements as a crutch. So what do I mean by using them as a crutch? Well, when you're going into the listening session without knowledge of the measurements, you're going into it and putting your ears and reputation on the line and basically saying, this is what I heard. And some people aren't that confident doing that. So they'll take a look at the measurements and they'll say, aha, this is what I think I should be hearing. I should be hearing this, I should be hearing this, I should be hearing this. And then they bring that into the listening. And that's what I said in the previous episode about when you do that, the measurements can end up dictating the listening process. Now, the problem with bringing the interpretation of the measurements into the listening is that measurements are really hard to interpret, and most people get them wrong. And so if someone gets their interpretation of the measurements wrong and brings that into the listening, well, then what happens is that's what comes out of the listening as well, and they're giving their viewers or readers bad information. Another problem with bringing the interpretation of the measurements into the listening has to do with the quality of the interpretation again. For example, some things that look like they should be audible in the measurements really aren't in the listening, and some things you might overlook or think won't be audible are. And it can be confusing, but it's also part of learning. And this is all the more reason that you want to do your listening first and your measurements next. To sum up and also reinforce how committed I am to make sure that measurements don't bias listening, let me tell you a story about something that happened yesterday. I was meeting up with Paul Barton, the chief designer and founder of PSB Speakers. Now, if you talk to Paul for more than a minute or two, you're going to talk measurements. He's totally into them. And one of the first things he said to me was, hey, let me show you the measurements on this new loudspeaker. And I said, no, please don't. I don't know if I'm going to be reviewing them, but if I am, I don't want to be biased by them. And he said, I understand. And I think most people do too.